evening and welcome to the Monday Night Football Mailbag Show. This is going to be a regular feature just for the upcoming few weeks before we get a few of our regular contributors back on board. So I'm afraid you're going to be dealing with just my own dulcet tones this evening. I'm going to be answering some questions with regards to the recent Edinburgh Derby, which will also incorporate some of the changes that fans will be hoping to see from the summer moving onwards. Now, I'll be your host and main contributor for the evening. My name's Scott McIntosh, and you can find me at my Twitter handle feed, which is at Macintosh1983. Now, moving on very quickly to the game on Friday, we're going to first of all cover my feelings based on the performance of both teams, also the tactics and team selection. Then we'll move on to some of the questions that our listeners have quite kindly left us for our show tonight on our Twitter and Facebook pages. Now, first of all, in terms of the feelings that I had leading up to the game when I saw both team selections, I must admit that I was concerned for Hearts given the team that we had to put out. I was a bit unsure about where we were going to go formation wise, although it turned out that I was about one selection away from getting it right. I technically had Connor Randall starting in the holding role next to Adeo instead of Michael Smith, who we had out there at left back instead of my team selection. Now, leading up to the game, I also discussed my thoughts with regards to what I was hoping Hibs would do, and as much as there was always going to be a bit of a risk having to deal with the movement and the guile and craft of Allen and McGeoch and McGinn in the same team, I felt that the exclusion of Marvin Bartley would open up space in between the defensive and midfield areas for Hibs that Hearts could potentially exploit if we had somebody maybe playing in the hole or in a sort of advanced number 10 position within the midfield. When you started to see how the first 10 to 20 minutes were coming along for both teams, it was evident that Hearts had actually got their, maybe not the team selection in terms of personnel right, but they definitely got the formation correct. So they went for pretty much a 4-2-3-1, sort of allowing Adeo and Smith to sort of concentrate on the sort of deep runs from Allen and McGinn, and then sort of play a free midfield ahead of that, which would hopefully occupy the Hibs defenders and again try and exploit that space that was going to be there through the omission of Marvin Bartley, who has been one of Hibs' strongest performers in the Derby matches over the last 2 or 3 seasons. Now, the first half didn't offer a lot. A lot of the main players were pretty much on the periphery of things. It was very clear, I would like to think anyway, for anyone watching the first half, that it was very much 21 players getting sucked into that Derby atmosphere and that typical sort of frenetic nature of a Derby match. And then there was Dion McGeoch doing his own thing, trying to dictate play and, trying to get his foot on the ball and, get his team pushing forward. Wasn't a lot really to write home about with regards to the first half. I felt that Hearts were holding their own, but again, there was a mix of that just through Hearts being competitive and also Hibs probably not having moved through the gears by that stage either. And you could tell by the reaction of the Hearts support at half-time that, it was definitely the Hearts fans that were responding more favourably to the first 45 minutes. Atmosphere was quite a strange thing. This isn't something that's been asked of me, so I really want to try and take the opportunity to touch on that just now. It's strange how much or how big a sort of change there's been in the mindset of both clubs when you see how the atmosphere's now sort of starting to pan out at the games at Easter Road. This has been the first time where Hibs, have failed to score early on. The last 3 games they've pretty much scored within the first 4 or 5 minutes. And you could tell that there was an air of expectation amongst the Hibs supporters on Friday. And quite rightly so, given their recent record against us and the fact that they've been the form team out the two consistently in the league season as well. That can bring about a bit of a diluted atmosphere, and it can sometimes be that the team that, or the set of fans that almost feel as if their team are against the wall somewhat, will actually raise the decibel levels slightly more. And I think to an extent that was actually happening on Friday. At half time, it could be argued that the Hearts fans were maybe slightly, over celebrating the fact that it was 0-0. But I think there was just a tinge of relief given the fact that we haven't really turned up at Easter Road now for a number of years since Gary Locke was last at the club. Now, moving on to the next sort of major point that I wanted to talk about, it was actually with regards to the referee and the linesmen. I felt that it was right that we gave them a positive sort of bit of feedback with regards to how they performed. Bobby Madden, who I've not been overly keen on generally speaking, he's been involved in some flashpoints for both clubs and during derby games as well. I felt he actually handled the game really well. I felt that he tried to allow things to flow as best as he can, and he also felt that he held back when there's maybe been one or two instances where players may have been booked in other type of matches. It's one of those rare times when I've seen a referee officiate an Edinburgh derby in the same way they would an Old Firm game. Now, personally speaking, I don't like to see referees deal with derby matches in a different way to a normal match, because that shouldn't be how they're handled. But I think it was quite refreshing to see that he was definitely, dealing with the game in a sort of sensible, calm manner. He wasn't in players' faces. He wasn't, stopping play at every sort of turn and every sort of bit of contact from either team. So definitely was one of the better sort of refereeing performances that I've seen in some time. Going on to specific players then, I think Dylan McGeoch's the first one that you really want to highlight on, given just how he was the only one that really wanted to get their foot on the ball during that first 45 to 60 minutes. In terms of the sort of Hearts side of things, I actually think that Steven Naismith was trying to do something similar in a more advanced role, and he was using that sort of experience that he's gained playing in big matches down south to actually find good pockets of space. Now, the flip side to McGeoch, who barely wasted a ball all night, was that Steven Naismith barely found a Hearts player, which was unfortunate for anyone of a Maroon persuasion. I would personally say, watching him, that there's still a degree of match sharpness that isn't quite there. I think that his match fitness has sort of raised, a few levels since the sort of Kilmarnock and Motherwell games. I think you've started to see that gradually improve, but there's still definitely an issue there where over, half a yard, there's still that thought process where he maybe just isn't quite, allowing things to happen naturally. Could be a lack of confidence either. You're talking about a player who wasn't wanted by his previous club, hasn't played a lot of football generally over the last sort of 18 months. So when you consider that, I mean, given that he is an experienced player, players like him can still go through stages where their confidence is not quite there. And I think he hasn't hit the ground running at the club, and that could also be preying on his mind as well. But I felt, generally speaking, he tried to do the right things. He did get himself in the right areas, right areas of the park. But unfortunately, that final ball was just lacking at times. That kind of brings me on now more to some of the more negative performances during the game. I felt that Kyle Lafferty was generally, seemed to be cutting quite a lonely and frustrated figure for Hearts. Now, again, a lot of that is not through his own fault. And, a few fans round about me were heckling him for the fact that, he was coming deep, he was out wide trying to receive the ball. I think that's just typical of someone who's spent the last sort of 6 or 7 months pretty much trying to create his own service. I mean, if you look back on a lot of Kyle Lafferty's goals, very few have came off the back of, a cross in the box or someone playing him through. He's actually scored quite a lot of decent goals and created his own chances. Plus, there's been a handful of penalties in there as well. What frustrated me about Kyle, though, was the fact that, unlike Naismith, who I felt was trying to still sort of stay positive, try and get the rest of the team on, for me at times I still feel that Kyle Lafferty lets him down in that department, and I still feel that that's something that he needs to try and improve on. Now, given his age, whether he's going to actually do that, who knows, but it is something that I would like to see improve over the coming weeks and months. Other sort of performers, good and bad, I felt that Connell Randall had a poor game. I'm going to touch on Conor Randall more later on in the show, because that is a question that someone's asked me specifically about my general feelings about Conor Randall. But in terms of Saturday, in terms of Friday, sorry, as much as he was played out of position once more at Easter Road, which wasn't great and wasn't probably fair on him, there was times where, you know, you would still expect a professional footballer to show a bit of composure and at least not get caught so square. You know, Martin Boyle's got great blistering pace, and he showed that in various, you know, points, especially in the first half on Friday. But as a fullback, regardless of whether you're playing on your weaker foot or not, you shouldn't allow yourself to get caught square against him so often. And that's what was happening with Conor Randall. You know, he was getting tight, but then getting caught so square that Boyle just had to take one touch and he was beyond him. And he had no chance of keeping up to him after that. So again, that's something that hopefully, you know, can be rectified over the coming weeks with regards to the, you know, the rest of the games that Hearts now have between now and the end of the season. I felt that defensively Hearts were fairly strong. You know, it's hard to say just how fit John Souttar and Christophe Berra were, but when you look in particular at the second goal that we lost on Friday, albeit, you know, it was a great effort from Jamie McLaren to find that space, but generally speaking, you could see that the two centre-halves looked very much ragged and tired and looked as if they were struggling, you know, to get that extra half a yard sort of advantage on their, you know, on the opposition. So I do feel that, you know, John Souttar and Christophe Berra definitely did not look fully fit, but done as well as they could do. Marcus Godinho, I felt after a steady second half against Motherwell, came on to have another decent performance. Could do with improving his final ball, and there was elements of his play in the final third that could do with a lot of general all-round improvement on. But again, I still feel as if we're kind of using Callum Patterson as that yardstick to sort of compare every right back with, whereas maybe we should just be trying to just settle for someone who's steady in the defensive style of play, which Coutinho certainly looks to be. You know, he's athletic enough, seems to get up and down the park fairly well, you know, strong in the tackle, positionally seems to be okay as well, although there will be ways in which that can improve during time. Midfield wise, Adeo once again, you know, since Arnold Doombs came off injured and against Ross County and being ruled out for the next few months, it's fair to say that Adeo has found himself picking up a lot of bookings based on the fact that he's having to cover a multitude of different positions in the midfield. Now, whether that's because we're short on players or the players that we've got there are not playing to their position in the right manner, he does, you know, he does seem to carry a lot of weight and expectation now from the fans, and I think he's actually doing a very good job. He's someone who I'd definitely like to see stay moving into next season. Moving back over to the Hibs players then, alongside Dylan McGeoch, who was the natural standout, I think it was fair to say that John McGinn had his standard Derby performance. You know, anytime he had the ball, he tried to drive forward. He had a very good effort with his right foot, which doesn't normally come about from him, but he had a really decent effort there which went just over the bar in the first half, followed by one that wasn't quite so great. But generally speaking, he was his usual busy self, and naturally once Hibs went 1 and 2 goals in front, you could just see the confidence oozing out of him as well. He revels in that sort of big game atmosphere. He does have, you know, the comparisons come about on a weekly basis now, but he seems to have that Scott Brown sort of character where, you know, I think the bigger the abuse or the more the abuse he seems to get, the more he just sort of takes that on board, and, you know, it's just water off a duck's back, I think, to him. In terms of Hibs, in terms of guys who maybe didn't make quite a big impression, I think Cam Berry would probably be one of them. Out of the two forwards, he was the one who had actually impressed me most leading up to the Derby match. I felt that McLaren, apart from offering, you know, a decent turn of pace, hadn't done a lot, but actually McLaren put in a really good shift on Friday. And then you could see that he was starting to create those little, you know, half yards for himself with that great effort that McLaughlin saved well in the second half. And then the way he took his goal as well, you know, there's many faults with regards to Hearts allowing a throw-in to drop in there, and then they seem to get enough bodies back, but again, you know, none of them seem to get close enough to McLaren before he shoots. But he does take the goal extremely well, and it'll be interesting to see how that first goal from open play sort of spurs him on between now and the end of the season. Midfield wise, Martin Boyle had a great game, as per usual again, model, total consistent player. Hanlon, usually consistent as well, had another great match, as did Lewis Stevenson. Many of the Hibs players just seem to find that extra gear as soon as the first goal went in. Now, I'm now going to start to cover some of the questions that have been sent in to me today, just purely because it will cover a lot of the things that I haven't said about the game yet, either pre-match, during the match or post-match, and also some of the other points that have sort of cropped up for both sides off the back of that as well. Now I'm going to start off with Chaps, who's one of our sort of regular sort of question guys from Kickback. Now, he's asked one of the sort of bigger questions off the back of the weekend, which is Craig Levein the right man to take us forward, or should we be looking elsewhere? I have been very vocal in my support of Craig Levein. I am someone who tries to see the main, positives that he can offer to a club in the Scottish Premiership. I think when you talk about Craig Levein, you've got to kind of put any context in the role that he's hired for. So I think when you look at his two most successful stints as a manager, you talk about Hearts and you talk about Dundee United, and you look at clubs that were needing a bit of stability, a bit of foundation set in at the club, in terms of defensively, then moving forward. And, just general progress in the league and a general sense of consistency and results. He's been good at getting that, and he's proven that again this season even although there's been a few draws. Hearts became very hard to beat at Tynecastle again. During his last spell, we spent a couple of seasons, apart from the Old Firm, losing to anyone at home. Now, the flip side of that, and again, I think that probably reared its ugly head, not so much on Friday, but in the Motherwell game the week before, was the fact that I think his plan as a manager is to try and make Tynecastle a fortress, get the majority of your results there, and then, try and pick up a lot of draws and the odd win away from home. Now, that in itself is proven to, have worked for him during his time at Hearts and Dundee United. The problem with that style of play is that it's then a case of trying to adjust for one-off cup matches, and I believe that's probably why we've got such a poor cup record under Craig Levein. I mean, I think apart from one solitary League Cup appearance against Rangers in 2003, we haven't really ventured any further than the quarter-final stages under his stewardship. So that certainly needs to be something that gets addressed. I appreciate that he's trying to sort of stabilise the club, given the legacy that were left from that sort of ill-fated Ian Cathro reign, but he really does need to start accepting that for a lot of fans, they would have probably swapped the odd win and draw from the last couple of months and finished bottom six to have got a trip to Hampden. And I'm sure a lot of clubs, fans of clubs out with the Old Firm would probably be thinking the same. But unfortunately, it wasn't to be. And, what I would say about him last week was he did identify that changes needed to be made at half-time. He made those changes and they were positive ones. But unfortunately, we were almost chasing after the game from the 7th or 8 minutes onwards, and ultimately were beaten by a great strike from Carl McHugh. Do I think he's the right man to take us forward? It's really hard to say. Although he did sign a 3-year deal only a few months ago, I would like to think that it's a deal that does get reviewed on a sort of rolling 12-month basis. One of the positives in having Craig Levein as manager just now is the fact that, there shouldn't be any need for any sort of cloak and dagger stuff where we're looking to talk to other people behind Craig Levein's back. I would like to think that if Anne Budge is feeling as if things aren't progressing the way she wants to, that she's got a relationship with Craig Levein where she can sit him down, talk about where he feels they are, and between themselves, try and come to an agreement over whether they think he should be allowed another season to try and, work on the improvements he has made defensively to us and see if he can then, add that in an offensive way as well, or if he feels that there's maybe managers out there that they can maybe try and persuade to bring in during the summer. Naturally, the best time to bring in a manager is normally before pre-season starts. You really want to give every manager a full pre-season to get his ideas across, implement his ideas into the squad, and also bring in the the style of player that he wants to see those sort of ideas sort of flow through. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Levein. I really can't answer just now whether I feel that he's the right man to take us forward. A big sign of that is actually going to be how we respond to the sort of recent step back over the last week or so. I think that we probably will scrape into the top six, and I always say that because Motherwell have got such a hard run in between now and the middle of April when the split comes about. It's probably a good thing that we do finish top six, because I think Craig Levein needs the opportunity to try and win some brownie points again, try and get a couple of big results between now and the end of the season. If he has a similar run to Ian Cathro had last year, which we can't dismiss, naturally if we end up in the top six, you're going to be in there with Hibs, Aberdeen, Rangers and Celtic, who are all going to have things to play for, and probably a rejuvenated Kilmarnock side who have semi-final places and potentially cup final places to play for as well if they can get past Aberdeen. So really it's going to be difficult to sort of see what happens with Levein between now and then. But for chaps, in terms of his question, all I can say is give it another couple of months and see how it goes, and see how he can get this current crop of players to respond to the sort of recent sort of trials and tribulations that the club's faced over the last week or two. Our next question is actually going to be pulled in from the Hibs page on Facebook. Now, we've got a couple of questions here from Callum Laidlaw and Stephen Kerr. It's pretty much centering around the same thing. So they're naturally Hibs fans who I think, out of a bit of jest and a bit of a sort of fishing expedition, are wanting to see how I feel about Craig Levein's post-match comments on how the game went on Friday and how scrappy it was. I would agree to him to an extent. It was quite a scrappy match for the first hour or so. Now, once Hibs went in front, Hibs generally, got confidence from that and then moved up a couple of gears and were very comfortable 2-0 winners after the game. So I think when he says that there wasn't a lot in the game, I would agree to a point that was right. But naturally, once Hibs went in front, there was only ever going to be one winner. In terms of how scrappy it was, as I pointed out earlier in the show, there was 21 hoof merchants and Dylan McGeoch on the park for the first half. So, I mean, again, I don't think he's really said a lot wrong. You could say it's sour grapes on his behalf. He hasn't really wanted to come out and congratulate Hibs on how they've played, but I'm sure even Neil Lennon would agree that Hibs could definitely be performing better than that. Now, again, that doesn't, that really does not bode well for Hearts if Hibs can turn up playing, second gear and still come out comfortable 2-0 winners. But that is literally just where both clubs are just now in terms of the derby matches, particularly Easter Road. Now, Callum Laidlaw then went on to ask, do you think Craig Levein's comments have backfired this time? Obviously, this is with regards to the natural order comments off the back of the 1-0 Scottish Cup win in January. I still think that people need to start seeing that in a more light-hearted way, and I actually think the way in which some Hibs fans have responded to it is the right way. So the bed sheets coming out towards the end of the match with a natural order sign, that's probably the right way of dealing with it. The wrong way of dealing with it is probably responding to it as if it's been derogatory or it's been insulting to the club. I just don't get that at all. I mean, the only thing that insults me about the comment is the fact that someone as well read and intelligent as Craig Levein looks at the derby record that Hearts have against Hibs, which does outweigh, in terms of wins and things of that nature, and then uses the term, we're restoring natural order. Now, that's the natural order. Nothing has affected that natural order to a great extent so far, so you can't be restoring it. The only time you would be able to restore it is if Hibs won the next 60 derbies and then were on parity and then we decided to win one. So it's, for me, personally speaking, the thing I don't get is the comments themselves, the way that it's been worded. I think it's fine for Craig Levein to come out and say that. I equally think it's fine for Hibs fans to claim that it has bit them in the backside, because naturally Hibs have came back and won, but I don't think Hibs have won that game on Friday because they've been fired up for the match. If anything, Hibs had the more level-headed players on the park during the course of the 90 minutes. So, if anything, I don't think that actually had that much of a bearing on the final outcome of the match. Now, Callums then went on to ask, do you expect any repercussions for both sets of fans setting off flares? That's an interesting one. I mean, I really try to encourage fans to try and add as much atmosphere as they can, both inside and outside the ground. And I hate to always sound like I'm part of that nanny state culture, which I try not to be, but I don't get the flares. I just don't get it. First of all, there is a health and safety aspect to it, and it's through no malicious intent from anyone. People are just wanting to try and add that. They see it getting done abroad, and they just think this looks great. And I suppose in some degrees it's great to see, but you're setting off a smoke flare. You don't know what sort of health conditions people have that are standing round about you, unfortunately. And I think there was even an incident at Livingston a couple of years ago with a Hibs game where someone did actually start having, I think it was a bit of an asthma attack because they were standing close by Hibs fans that were setting it off. I'm a bit perplexed as to how they're getting allowed into the grounds with it. Now, I was actually stopped. I was told to take my jacket and my hat off, before I set step up the steps towards the turnstile. So I do find that a little bit strange, and given that I was going into the turnstiles into the upper stand, again I find that a little bit strange that they're carrying out that check, whereas a few people that have managed to get into the lower end to throw in the flares don't seem to have been searched quite as vigorously. But then maybe that's the stewards maybe not wanting to approach groups of people in the same way that they do individuals walking into the ground. I'm not quite sure if that's maybe the case. What I would like to call out though is the sheer stupidity of throwing a flare on the park when your team have just scored. Now, last week Hearts had struggled up until the point that they'd brought on Milinkovic, and they'd got that penalty which was subsequently scored by Kyle Lafferty. Now at that stage, really, as a group of players, what you want to do is get back on the front foot when your opposition are on the ropes. They're at home, you've got 5,000 fans, right behind the team now. You really just want to get started as soon as possible. Now, to throw a flare onto the park at that stage, which then delays the match by, 3, 4, 5 minutes, again, it just needs a little bit of thought about it, to be perfectly honest. But in terms of repercussions, I haven't really, seen a lot, apart from the odd passing comment by journalists on Twitter and in the paper, so I'm not quite sure what will happen there behind closed doors and whether either club will be pulled up for it. I'm now wanting to, try and concentrate as much as I can on Hibs over the next sort of stage, so I'm going to try and pull up a couple of questions that were asked with regards to them. Now, one of the questions that was asked with regards to Hibs was from Callum again, and he did ask, can Hibs finish second or third? Now, I think third is definitely attainable, especially when you consider that Aberdeen's major Achilles heel over the last couple of years under Derek McInnes has been turning up for the big matches and the big occasions. Now, once you're in that top six, albeit Hearts are not playing well just now, Hearts still view the Aberdeen games as fairly big matches. They're also going to be playing against Hibs, Celtic and Rangers, who have got things to play for as well. So, yeah, I mean, I certainly can see Aberdeen dropping points between now and the end of the season. They've also still to play Hearts at Tynecastle before the split as well. I suppose it just depends how luck's going to, come about, for both teams with regards to the draw after the split. So there's definitely going to be a case where Hibs are potentially going to have to go to Ibrox for a third time. I think Hearts might potentially have to do that as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how the split's going to, play about luck-wise for Aberdeen there as well. But I certainly think Hibs have got, more than a decent chance of finishing third. Second as well, really. I mean, for all of Rangers' attacking intent and the fact that they've definitely, moved on a couple of gears from the midfield up front, they're still riddled with holes at the back. They've still got issues at centre half. That's not been helped by Bates getting injured yesterday. So it'll be interesting to see, how well they can, or how much they can rely on Alves and Cardozo to sort of get them through between now and the end of the season. So there's definitely scope there for Hibs to finish second or third if they can sort of, remain consistent themselves. And again, the only thing I could sort of highlight as well is Neil Lennon being, tactically switched on enough to identify that it was a calculated risk not to play Bartley against Hearts. Because of our lack of options in the final third, it turned out to be the right decision. But against anyone who has a decent number 10 or someone who's firing on all cylinders from that position, you really need someone in there who can try and just, break up play and make sure that they're playing in between the lines of the defenders and the midfielders. So it'll be interesting to see how often Bartley gets included in the teams once those split fixtures are announced, because I think Hibs are going to need him, and I think Allen's going to have to just sort of make do with sort of maybe being a bit part player, but that would just be my opinion. Naturally, Neil Lennon might decide that it's still worth making those risks and trying to see if they can basically just come back and say, well, we don't care if we don't have Bartley in there, we're just going to score more goals than you are. If you score 2, we'll just score 3. Looking at some of the other topics that the Hibs fans have been asking us about, one of the other ones that was brought up that interested me was to do with the recent sort of international squad that was picked by Scotland today, Alex McLeish's first squad, and it was from Jamie Thompson. Now, he's asked, with Alex McLeish present at the game on Friday, how many Hibsters could join McGinn in being capped for Scotland? So the 4 examples he made here were Hanlon, Allen, McGeoch and Boyle. I have to be completely honest and say that for me, Allen and Boyle, I would pretty much dismiss them straight away. I think that Scott Allen has potentially found his home with regards to being at Hibs, and that just seems to bring out the best in him. But, he's 25 or 26 now. We're still talking about him needing to have a consistent run of games in the top league. And I just feel that his time has sort of been in past. Dylan McGeoch definitely could make an impression in a Scotland team. Again, it just depends on how much competition there is there for places. Paul Hanlon, I would have to say I'm a little bit shocked that he hasn't been included in the current squad today, given the players that have. It is fair to say that, Martin and Grant Hanley have been performing well at club level this season, but they're tried and trusted players at that level. I do think that friendly matches should be getting used to try and see if there is, potentially scope for bringing other players in there that can compete for those places. And I think it's fair to say that Paul Hanlon's been a model of consistency probably over the last 3 or 4 seasons, albeit some of that's been at a lower level. He's still been able to showcase his ability in the big sort of cup matches even during those seasons as well. Now, I mean, Martin Boyle, again, I can get why he would be viewed as somewhat of a favourite, a fan's favourite, or a cup figure, so to speak, at Hibs. But I think in terms of international class, I wouldn't say he offers anything like some of the other wide players we've got. And, that's me speaking as someone who thinks that we've got a lack of consistency amongst our wide men. You look at Phillips and Forrest and Ritchie, and you see guys who are playing at a very good level, but haven't really turned up for Scotland on a consistent basis. I really can't see Martin Boyle offering much more than what they currently can just now. So I'm afraid I would probably have to pass on him and Allen, but definitely McGeoch and Hanlon could certainly offer the squad something. Now, we then move back on to some of the Hearts related questions. Now, one of the ones that was flagged up here was by Marvin on Jambo's Kickback. Now, he's asked whether we need to fix the team first or relay the pitch. I'm just going to sort of briefly touch on this because I still don't know how much the total outlay is going to be on the pitch, and there's still question marks that need to be raised about how quickly we're going to finish some of the sort of stand development that we still need to work out as well just now on the main stand. So given that we do need to probably go through another summer of transition and bringing players in and having, again, that revolving door policy at the club, which seems to have manifested over the last couple of years, I would be inclined to just carry out temporary, maintenance on the pitch. Just try and get it to a reasonable level for next season and focus on, sorting out the lack of balance in the squad just now. Because recruitment is something that Hearts need to look at, and it's not recruitment so much on an individual player by player basis, because I actually like a lot of the players that we've signed since last summer. The problem is there's no balance to our recruitment, so there's still a lack of real pace and width in the team, creativity and guile in that final sort of third or midfield area. So I'd rather see us try and address those issues rather than the pitch, but it remains to be seen, in terms of finance, what we could be looking at. And again, that probably just, comes back to the whole comment about, well, would you like to finish top six? Well, ideally we need to. I mean, at the risk of sounding like Robbie Nielsen, I suppose we could do with a few money spinners, so to speak. And we could do with earning as much revenue as we can between now and the end of the season. Naturally, if we finish top six, there's more scope for more live games, bigger away crowds as well. So I do think that we need to, even just for that need, we need to finish in the top six, and we're just going to have to, take our medicine. And if that means, losing the majority of those games with a view to earning extra revenue that can complement the squad and help whichever manager is in place over the summer, then so be it. I do think that that's just something we need to take on the chin. Big Kyle on Kickback has also asked, do you think Lafferty, Souttar and McLaughlin will still be here next season? I think it's fair to say that John McLaughlin does see his career elsewhere, and I think the move up to Hearts has been always viewed as a temporary one, hence the 1 year contract. There's a lot of rumours flying about just now that I think even Hearts have still been sort of almost quoting Alan McGregor over the last 12 months, and there is still, rumour and innuendo floating about, outside the club that he could still be coming in this summer, potentially as a replacement for McLaughlin. So I don't see McLaughlin staying, unfortunately. Kyle Lafferty, given his almost journeyman-like career to this stage, I think it's always hard to just dismiss it and say that he's definitely going to be at the club. Given his personal issues, which is, it's great that he's managed to, seek help and come out and talk about it, but ultimately that doesn't change the position he's in, which is that he's left himself financially, I wouldn't say vulnerable, but not as well off as he should have been, considering the career he's had to this point. So I always feel that he's just one final big offer away from leaving the club, and I think Hearts would ultimately probably let him go if the offer was right as well, given that he's only signed a 2 year contract with us. John Souttar, I don't see John Souttar leaving anytime soon. I do believe that this is still the best environment for him to develop as a player, given that Christophe Berra's there, Aaron Hughes, Craig Levine's there as well to offer his guidance. I really can't see John Souttar leaving anytime soon, at least over the next 12 or 18 months, unless a silly offer came in, which I can't see. I think John Souttar, similar to what I mentioned about Scott Allen earlier, John Souttar's another player that's highly rated by most, but still needs to show great consistency over a full 12 months. This season's been the most sort of consistent he's been whilst at Hearts or Dundee United, but I still feel that he needs to carry that on for about another 6 to 12 months before you'll find anyone from maybe say the Championship end of the English League sort of coming in with a reasonable offer. Sex Panther on Kickback has asked, does anyone agree that we do not appear to be sending out our strongest team on a regular basis? I believe that we are forcing the youngsters to play when we do not need to. Now, that was something that Craig Fowler and other journalists were referring to on Twitter after the Motherwell game. I think particularly with regards to the exclusion of Michael Smith for Marcus Godinho, who was making his first team debut. I think that's a difficult one to comment on, and I think it's one of those where Craig Levine's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. Now, if you look at a fine example of that, would probably be Friday. Harry Cochrane pulls up with an injury very early on. Now, the options on the bench are Henderson, McDonald, Blabin, Callaghan and Amankwa. Now, Amankwa's still trying to find his feet, which I think's clear to see even from the sort of brief cameo that he offered in the second half on Friday. And Boabin and Callaghan, I think, to be polite, are very polarising and divisive characters within the Hearts support. So I think that, if they had brought on Boabin or Callaghan for Cochrane on Friday, that would have been discussed as a very negative substitution off the back of losing the game. The only thing I would say about bringing in McDonald is, given that Henderson looks more adept at bringing the ball into feet and maybe holding off challenges, I would have probably brought Henderson on before McDonald, but that's really the only change I would have made with regards to that substitution. Again, you look at the Motherwell game, and I think it was more to do with our overall approach to that match that lost us that game, rather than making the decision to play Godinho ahead of Michael Smith. So I get to the extent we're maybe forcing youngsters to play more than we need to be. So I don't mind us giving youngsters a chance and giving them a run in the team, and giving them that platform to sort of come on and make great strides in their development. But as you can see with Cochrane, there's definitely a case to be said that he's played far too much football this season for someone of his age and his sort of slight build. You can see that playing on those winter surfaces are definitely taking a toll on him, and that starts to lead to the sort of injuries that you've seen him pick up on Friday. So actually, I mean, it's not great that he's out injured for 6 weeks, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing either for him to just sort of recharge the batteries and maybe try and come back for the last 2 or 3 games of the season. Now, going back to the sort of Hibs end of the discussion, there was a question that was asked with regards to Hibs' chances of keeping Kamberi. So this was asked by @MDowOfficial on our Twitter feed. Now, he's asked what sort of money do we think that his parent club, Grasshoppers, would be after. Really difficult to say. I don't have any sort of inside knowledge of, how Hibs are viewing any of their own players. I think most people are making the assumption that a deal can be done with Scott Allan purely because Celtic will probably not be too difficult to deal with, and potentially Celtic will be having their eyes on John McGinn as well. So it could be said that he'll get kept on. Kamberi, as I said earlier in the show, I felt that he was probably one of the more disappointing players for Hibs on Friday, but that was only due to the fact that I felt that he had really impressed me in the weeks leading up to that. He looks like a player that's well suited for the game in Scotland, but again, I would like to see it over a more sustained period of time, and maybe see if I could make my judgment on him probably, once the next 5 or 6 games have went past. Too many times have I seen strikers, come onto the scene. A great example would probably be Wanma at Hearts a couple of years ago. They come on, they make an impression, but then, similar to wide players, because you play in Scotland and you're up against teams 4, 5, or in some cases 6 times a season, players get more of an opportunity to find you out very quickly. So it's going to be interesting to see if Kamberi is just someone who makes, a very sort of small but brief impact, or whether he's going to be able to sustain that form. So it will be interesting to see how him and McLaren progress as well, because they do have a makings of being a fairly decent partnership and probably look more well suited to one another to, say, Stokes and Murray did at the beginning of the season. Now, moving on to the Hearts side of things again, and just sort of focusing and staying on the loan side of it. Someone did ask, I think it was Callum Laidlaw again, actually, to be fair to him, what loans at the 2 teams could you see becoming permanent? So I'm going to touch on the Hibs players first of all. I've already sort of given my impression of Kamberi's situation at the club. Jamie McLaren, again, if this does lead on to a bit of goal scoring form for him, then naturally I would imagine that Hibs will ask that question. But the German second division does have a lot of money behind it just now, and it could be that, just finance wise, they're not going to be in a position where they're going to need to just sell him cheaply. So it could be a case where Hibs maybe decide on another loan deal if they do want to keep him. Scott Allan, again, I think as long as he maintains his early form that he's shown now that he's came back to the club, I think it's fair to say that he'll be kept on. Faisal Reras, pretty much going to turn into a bit of another Adam Eckersley type deal, you know, where he turns up and, you know, I don't think he ever actually will put on a Hibs jersey unless he maybe gets an opportunity or so, you know, towards the end of the season. I don't think he'll be getting kept on. At the Hearts side of it, it's really difficult to say. I mean, Dimitri Mitchell, I would assume, and I'm not, I can't see him, you know, making any sort of great waves within the Man United squad anytime soon. So I would probably presume that he would end up possibly with an English Championship club next season. So it'll be a case of you've tried your luck in Scotland, you've obviously developed maybe some of the more physical aspect of your game playing there. Now it's a chance to maybe play with a more technically minded team in the English Championship. So I think that'll probably be where he ends up. Conor Randall's contract runs out at Liverpool, and I'm just going to tie this in with what Callum Laidlaw also asked, which is Conor Randall really that bad? Now, I think that, you know, question was again probably one that was asked more out of jest than any sort of, you know, great interest on Callum's behalf. But, you know, Conor Randall's been a steady and, you know, dependable player for us when he's been played in position, which ultimately has only been about 50% of the time. You know, Ian Cathro primarily signed him to play in midfield, and I get that he could probably offer the engine to play there, but he doesn't really offer any great ability on the ball. And although he's positionally disciplined enough to play that position, I really don't see that being his specialist position. So he has played well at right back, but I think when you look at the other options we've got there, we've got Michael Smith, we've got Jamie Brandon to come back from injury, Marcus Godinho's now starting to stake a place in the team. He's recently just received a 2-year contract. And then you also have to remember that Liam Smith will be back from his loan agreement at St Mirren, and he's had a great season as well. His confidence is bound to be up, given how well St Mirren have been playing. So when you consider, you know, the great amount of options we've got there, on Conor Randall's wages, I would find it very hard to think that a deal can be done between the club and the player, even if the club wanted to. David Milinkovic has definitely, you know, proven to be a bit of a favourite at the club amongst the fans, probably more so amongst the fans than with Craig Levein, who still bemoans his tactical and discipline at times, and the fact that his head can get caught in the clouds. But I think that's probably one of the things that endears him to the support. He does have that tendency to almost just chase after lost causes and find himself probably in areas of the park that he doesn't need to be in. But he's got great endeavour as a player, and he's one of those few players that you see arrive and very quickly look like they get the club, they get the fans, and they actually do want to be here and actually further their career with the club. Unfortunately, you know, he's a part of that Italian loan deal system where he's currently contracted through 2 other clubs. So again, it's all about, you know, how easy are those clubs going to be to deal with. I don't think he's going to be hard to deal with in terms of, you know, offering personal terms, but it could just depend on whether Craig Levein's seen enough to sort of, you know, take a punt on him and keep him for another year. Adeo, I think the club will be probably interested in keeping him. Again, that one's just going to come down to finances, like everything is, I think, with Hearts over the summer, when you consider that there's still other work to be done off the park as well. The final one's Stephen Naismith. Now, he's taken a decent cut in pay to come up to Hearts. Now, I would presume that he's probably at a stage in his life, maybe similar to Berra, where he wants to be back in Scotland and wants to settle his family back up here. Now, he's kind of almost dismissed a few of the options that he had available to him straight away. So, you know, he isn't keen on playing at the home park at Rugby Park every second week due to the AstroTurf, you know, stylish surface. The Rangers thing seems completely dead in the water, even although I believe he would have been keen to have went back there. So there isn't really a lot of options there for him. So it could be that he ends up at Hearts. You know, I have to admit, I'd say that there's probably more chance of him being at the club than there is, you know, the likes of Randall and Mitchell. So it's a bit 50-50 on that one, but I wouldn't rule it out entirely, just due to the age that he's at. And, you know, there could be something in there where Hearts offer him a deal with, you know, some level of coaching to come into that as well, similar to what we've maybe done with the likes of Don Cowie recently as well over the last couple of seasons. Now that's just sort of highlighting, you know, where I think Hearts and Hibs will sort of do their business with regards to loan deals. future shows we will concentrate on what sort of areas of the park I feel that both clubs need to try and improve on. Now, looking back again at some of the questions that have been sent in, I really must thank everyone for taking the time to come in with these questions, because it does make these shows a lot easier when there's a lot of content to try and cover. Now, Callum Wadlow again has basically came back and says, a lot of Jambos are saying enjoy it while it lasts. Next season will be back to normal. Now, he's asked, what is the basis for this argument? Is there evidence that Hearts will finish above Hibs next season? Now, if you look at the way the two squads are currently set up, you'd probably say that, you know, I wouldn't say so. I think Hibs are definitely on the ascendancy in a footballing sense. I'd say that Hearts are very much a work in progress, and we're still a team that seem capable of moving one step forward, two steps back at times just now. And I think in terms of the whole football and infrastructure, I think both teams are flourishing just now. If you see the amount of youth players are getting game time, and you know the way that our youth teams are playing as well, anyone who saw the Hibs and Hearts under-20s perform this season, you know they've got really great teams coming through there. So that way I think there's not a lot between the teams. But in terms of the present and moving into next season, again, a lot can happen over the summer. It could be that this summer is the summer where ultimately some of that Alan Stubbs legacy starts to sort of, you know, diminish and sort of wilter away from Hibs in terms of McGeoch's out of contract. McGinn is going to have a number of suitors again, and the likes of sort of Darren McGregor and David Gray and that are going to be, you know, another year older as well, and sort of trying to contend with various injuries. So it's going to be interesting to see if Neil Lennon adapts to that, because I have to be completely honest and say that I find Neil Lennon's transfer movement so far Hibs to be a bit hit and miss, to be perfectly honest. You know, there have been, you know, the odd standouts, but there's also been a lot of players that have really failed to make an impression. I mean, for example, he signed 3 strikers in the summer, and either, you know, permanently or through loan agreements, all 3 are no longer playing for the club just now. So, you know, that definitely needs to improve if Hibs are to try and sort of either maintain this level of consistency in the league, or even try and improve on what they've achieved so far this season. And again, you know, it's really hard to determine where Hearts are going to be, because I think no one really understands what their finances are going to be like from one year to the next, because there's still a lot of, you know, financing coming through the you know, the various sort of supporter schemes that are set up, the foundation of Hearts. There's still work that needs to be done in terms of infrastructure, you know, off the park and also on it. And I think because of all those different sort of variants to sort of try and sort of, you know, include in this type of argument, it's something that probably needs a bit more research and a bit more time to think about before I'm going to give a full and frank sort of answer, maybe on a future show. Now, another question that was asked with regards to the loan signings was from Billy Chaotic 182 on Twitter. Now, he's actually asked if I feel that Stephen Naismith has been a huge letdown. I suppose you can only answer that with a yes, but I would say that a lot of it is probably just down to, you know, the fact of the matter is he hasn't played a lot. What has impressed me is the way in which he tries to guide some of the younger, you know, players through the games. And I think that in itself will probably prove invaluable to those players as they try and progress. But in terms of, you know, instant results and seeing him having an instant impact on the team, I'm afraid it just hasn't been there. There's still time to rectify that, and like I say, it's very much 50-50 on whether he'll be there, whether it be through a loan deal or a permanent deal for another 12 months after this deal. But I think it's fair to say that, you know, his signing has been somewhat of a disappointment. But again, it's the risk you take when you bring in players, and, you know, they have had injury issues, you know, over the last sort of 12 or 24 months. Looking at it again, you know, just to kind of give my own feelings on, you know, natural order, and, you know, the fact that there has been a sort of shift in the balance of power between the two clubs, even if it's just in the sort of short immediate term just now. Some people have naturally talked about, you know, well, are Hibs capable of putting another great run together, you know, like the 9 in a row that they've just had recently? I can't see it, and I can't see it from both clubs. And I think the reason why is just purely because if you're to look at when Hibs and Hearts have been at their most dominant in the Derby fixture, so you look at Hibs probably from about the late 60s through to the late 70s, then you look at Hearts throughout, you know, the majority of the 80s and 90s, a lot of it was built on continuity within the squads, you know, so they had pretty much a backbone to each team, and then they had, you know, your danger players who were always a constant menace to the opposition. In today's game, I think it's very hard to keep that continuity going. Hibs have actually done a reasonably decent job, sort of firstly through Stubbs and now Lennon, but you've got to also consider that some of those players have been there, they've managed to get promotion and a Scottish Cup win under their belt. Now once they get Europe, which they will do either through finishing second, third or fourth this season, and they get a European, you know, experience with the club, it's going to be difficult to see how Hibs can then keep the likes of McGinn and McGeoch thereafter. So with that being said, I think it's going to be very hard for Hibs or Hearts to try and strike up double-figure runs between now and, you know, over the next 10 or 20 years. I just think that the power will shift back and forth, and it'll become almost cyclical. You know, every couple of years, you know, either side will build up a bit of a run, maybe 4 or 5 games, and then it'll come to an end again. I really can't see either team really, you know, hitting the heights of a 17 or a 22 in a row, or the sort of dominance that the Turnbulls Tornadoes had over Hearts during the 60s and 70s, just purely because, you know, even if you were to take the 9 game in a row situation in it, Hibs couldn't win an away game during even that run. So, you know, when you look at the stats, it's very difficult to see how that is gonna come about. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why there's certain Hearts fans who do, albeit maybe don't have a lot of evidence to back it up, come out and say, well, next season is going to be different, you know. Similar to the Craig Levein natural order comments, there's probably a portion of the Hearts support, probably the ones who are of my generation, who are probably being conditioned to seeing Hearts, you know, get the better of Hibs. And again, the reasons for that, if you go back to the 80s and 90s, we just had that continuity running through our team, and we had that, you know, bedrock of a team that played maybe, you know, probably about 30 or 40 derbies each. And then you sort of look at when we had our second sort of decent spell, which was under Jeffries and Paulo Sergio just a few years ago. Now, I think when you look at that, that was probably just predominantly down to having better managers the Hibs had at the time, and guys who seem to understand the derby, also players that understood it as well. So even although not a lot of our players were homegrown, we had the likes of Ryan McGowan, you had Rudy Scatchell, you had Zaliukas, you had Danny Granger. You had guys who seemed to understand what it took to win a derby. Hibs, on the other hand, had, you know, whether it be Pat Linen, Pat Fenlon, Terry Butcher, you know, Colin Calderwood, they just didn't seem to have the right men in charge. And also, you know, a lot of the players seemed to just come and go as well. And there was that sort of revolving door policy, so it's hard for players to really get what it meant. So, I mean, if you take those 2 spells out, I think that's probably why Hearts fans, you know, maybe rightly or wrongly, feel that they are going to come back and bounce back next season. But in terms of evidence based on, you know, how we've handled the derby matches since probably, I would like to say 2016 rather than 2015, then I think it's hard to really argue with Hibs fans that feel confident that they're going to be able to continue this good running form, particularly Easter Road. Looking at again, you know, the Craig Levein situation, it's very frustrating just now to attend games and try and engage in conversations regarding Craig Levein. There's almost just these 2 camps that are both at total extremes. So, you know, there's people who will, you know, not see a fault in him, and then there's people who, you know, can't see any positives. You know, they're still blaming him for Robbie Neilson losing, you know, Derby Cup games, and for me personally speaking, I just think that's just a byproduct of the sort of age that we live in, especially when you're trying to have these conversations on social media. You know, people they don't want to be individuals, they want to be part of the group. And because they want to be part of the group, it's very difficult to almost sit on the fence and, have like a kind of partisan opinion on the polarising figures such as Craig Levein. So I think it has been difficult to try and obviously gauge from Hearts fans, what are the pluses and minuses on Craig Levein. Someone will either come back and list 10 minuses and no pluses, or vice versa, when in fact I think the truth is he's somewhere in between. He's someone who's brought stability to the club at a time that we needed it. So I think when you look at his appointment, it was what we needed at the time. Now that we're a few months further on and he's managed to stabilise the club to an extent on the field, it's going to be a case that they need to address it and review it. But again, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. It could be that those talks take place on an almost weekly basis. And again, it's just a case of waiting and seeing what happens once we get, the fixtures, done with now between now and the middle of May. Now, to finish the show off today, I just wanted to talk about something that actually hit the headlines of the news, not Hearts or Hibs related, earlier on today, and it's to do with Jamie Carragher and the spitting incident regarding the gentleman, which I'll put in loose terms, and his 14-year-old child, who was in the car with them, heckling Jamie Carragher for some distance, whilst also recording him. Jamie Carragher then pulling the window down and spitting in his direction. Now, first of all, I think that we need to, it's like chicken and egg sort of scenario here. There's been a lot of just jumping the gun and looking at Jamie Carragher's conduct, and very little is being said about the fact that someone is recording Jamie Carragher without his consent. And secondly, also, whilst he's got a child in his car, spending more time concentrating on abusing Jamie Carragher than actually focusing on what's ahead of him. So I think, although spitting in someone's direction, some people would maybe say that's abuse, that's something that you should be maybe, pulled up for. I think we've first of all got to deal with probably what was the main issue, which is recording someone and heckling at them whilst they're driving. With regards to Jamie Carragher's conduct, it's very difficult to say anything that he hasn't already covered himself, and I think in terms of sort of damage limitation, I think he's probably done quite a decent job of that today. Now, he has received quite a lot of support. I'd say mainly support if you take away some of the ludicrous comments that were made by Vinnie Jones earlier this morning on radio. Most people do seem to be backing him and saying, look, he should be given a second chance. Now, this comes off the back of Malcolm Mackay being sort of given a very prominent role in the future of Scottish football, off the back of some really unsavoury sort of text messages that were relayed out to the press whilst he was still manager at Cardiff. So what I'd like to discuss, and it's something I've actually put down as a poll on our Twitter page at MNFootball, is with all these second chances being handed out to senior figures within the game, why is it that there seems to be so little of this offered to supporters who are pulled up for unruly conduct? So again, for me personally, I think we'd need to maybe look at it as a case-by-case scenario rather than having a general rule of thumb of yes or no. But I find it a bit, it's a bit frustrating that clubs who want to claim to be the heartbeat of this, the local community and there for all their fans, when these fans sometimes get involved in some silly, issues and some unsavoury moments, that the first thought in the club's head is to just kind of almost dismiss everything, get rid of the problem, and that's it. It's been dealt with. Now, I suppose it's easy for me to sort of pass judgment on the clubs because they're having to make these decisions thinking about the potential fines that could be set if they allow, these fans to stay and sort of continue to conduct themselves in that manner. But what I would like to see is clubs to maybe try and take a bit of ownership for this. Now, I'm not saying that they should have to, but I just think it would be quite a nice sort of change. I think the clubs should maybe be trying to offer education, whether it be to do with, sexual politics or maybe gender stereotypes or bigotry or sectarianism. It could be just down to just general misbehaviour from some of the younger fans as well. For me, just removing the problem from the stadium and putting it back into the laps of the local community is probably not dealing with it. And I think that there probably should be some sort of system put in place where you offer fans education and you offer them that second chance. Now, ultimately, if they don't take that second chance on, or they're not willing to sort of comply with the terms and conditions that you set to them, then naturally you do need to look at things such as banning orders and, the removal of season tickets. But I do think it's an interesting topic, and as I've said, it is something that I've put down on the Twitter feed at MN Football. So if you've got time, once you've been hearing this show, to sort of give your own thoughts on that, then please do. There's also various threads that we've got set up on our Facebook page and also on Kickback as well, so feel free to pass over any comments on tonight's show. Things will continue to get back on an even keel. We've still got Sam and Sean and that to come back, and we will be looking at sort of our future content and how we can sort of continue to provide that to our listeners. I'll also be looking at improving on our current YouTube channel content and looking at building a new website as well. So just keep an eye out for all of that information in the coming weeks and months. But thank you again to anyone who takes the time to listen to me this evening, and take care to everyone. Goodbye.